Greetings, friends. I'm Galen, and welcome to the Gaming, Adventure, and Discovery Explorers.
A show about our adventures and discoveries as we explore the world of gaming. I'm Chad.
On today's show,
Gnolls repaired.
let's explore. Chad, how are you?
Galen, oh man, I'm so good.
This is my Gnoll voice, Chad.
Oh,
How are you?
I could tell. Could tell that was Galen's monster voice.
That's
anyway.
exactly. So, what have you been up to, game-wise? What's been going on?
I've been having fun. One little thing I've just been reading. I haven't really been playing it, but I picked up. It's an adventure. It's called Deep Carbon Observatory.
Ooh.
And it's by Patrick Stewart, wrote it, and the art is by Scrap Princess. And those are two, I think, generally considered old school Renaissance creators.
Okay.
And I just watch out for both of them because they do really great creative things. And Scrap Princess is a really unique artist who harkens back. Their art really harkens back to the old. It's almost scribbly in nature, but I just love it. And it's always just so super creative. Anyway, it was like $20. I'd heard that about it. And it sounded like it was a really fun thing. So I bought that and I've been reading through it. I might do a review on that at some other time. But,
Excellent.
Yeah, but I don't know when I'll run it. Like, that's part of the thing about not having a lot of time to run games. It's a little too long for a one-shot.
There are just also so many games out there.
There is infinite number of things to do.
Yeah, right.
But I've actually had a little bit of time to do some more computer gaming, too. I made it through the initial campaign mode for Left 4 Dead 2.
Okay.
As I talked about before, I had accidentally played it online with other people before playing it at all by myself, and I didn't know how to change my gun or like how the communication worked, and so I went through the campaign, and it was super fun. And then I went online and played a successful match with strangers and had a lot of fun with that.
Good.
Yeah, I am a little tired of like just all the like. It's so violent. I mean, you were just shooting people in the head like all the time.
Yeah.
They're zombie people, but it's shooting people in the head. And the carnage is a bit much to play for too long.
Yes, definitely.
What I just started doing yesterday, I just started playing Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And have you ever played any of those Fallout games at all?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I haven't. Like, I dabbled with Fallout 2 a little bit, but it was like really it was too old even for me, and I love old games. Have you played this one? Have you played New Vegas?
I have not played New Vegas.
Okay.
No.
So I think it's essentially the Skyrim engine. It looks very much like Skyrim, only as you know, it's like post-apocalyptic, and this one has a very Western feel, like spaghetti Western feel. Do the other Fallout games have that?
They have different feels to them.
Okay.
Some of them have a real sort of like Mad Max kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is sort of a thread that runs through it, a Western kind of thread.
Okay.
Like the unexplored wilderness kind of thing.
Okay. This one is really so far, and I've only played it like 2 hours maybe, but it's very explicit. Like, there's a Marty Robbins song playing like in the background. You know that like that. You know who I'm talking about? Marty Robbins. He was that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a good musical enough person to sing it for you, but so if you're listening to this, Google, pull up Marty Robbins on Google him up or play him on your music service of choice, and it's all about gunfights in the West and dying of thirst in the desert. And all that
good
stuff. So anyway, so I've been really been enjoying that so far. I just that's all I want to do is just play more of it. Like, it's a Western, but with lasers and stuff.
Are you playing a good character, or is your character like leaning the other way?
I think I'm gonna go good with this playthrough. Yeah, I think I am. What I often will do is like try to play it down the middle a little bit, but then you can kind of get the worst of both worlds in these games sometimes.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna just be good, but kind of in a badass way. I think it'll be my goal. I might have messed up the build a little bit right out of the gate. I want to be like really tech focused. So instead of using like just guns, I want to use like lasers and energy weapons and stuff. And I think I can do that. I think my build is good for that, and like explosives. I think that'll actually be pretty fun.
Yeah.
My repair skill is not as good as I'd wish, so I might focus on that, building that up. Turn her into a kind of a tech geek kind of character. I think that'll be fun. So
I gotcha. Yeah.
So that's what I've been up to. How about yourself? Have you been able to squeeze any fun gaming stuff in your life?
I have not, but what I have done is go back and read through all my old RPG books. And most of the ones I have, they're old, like Marvel superheroes and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other strangeness. And I made some characters.
Nice.
Because that's endlessly entertaining for me.
Yeah, what'd you make?
So I made a porcupine who's good with explosives.
Cool.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
We had a golden era of that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game. As I remember, in character creation, you can make a squad of characters who are all the same species of animal. If you want, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are. I remember that being very difficult, but also pretty cool. Did you look into that at all?
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
You were just making
just the one-offs. Yeah, but it totally is like someday in my life I want to actually play that game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I got the gaming system when I was in high school, I think, and never found anyone to play it with. But I have like thousands of characters that I've created over the years. So someday I'm gonna play that.
I think I've played it exactly one time, as far as I can remember, and it was it was like a death trap adventure.
Oh,
and we all made our characters, and we were all in this death trap, and mine was a tiger. And I rolled really well in resources, so he was really wealthy and had like a DeLorean.
Oh, nice!
Which was awesome.
Yeah.
But then, like a dummy, I didn't buy a good armor with him because I was all thinking style rather than like survivability. And so the party was all separated at first, and then we all had to like get through these like a puzzle or die. Essentially, it was like figure out the puzzle or die. And I lived. I think two of us might have lived. I'm not sure. 2 out of 4, I think. Then the next thing was like we had to fight like a ninja or something, and my character just died, was killed by the ninja. Again, because I don't know if it was really causation, but it felt like because I didn't buy that stupid armor that I should have.
But I had a really cool DeLorean.
Exactly. That was not at all useful in a dungeon, in a death trap. Yeah. That game has a notoriously bad reputation for the playability, though. All those Palladium games. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't remember it being that bad, but I remember recently I've heard that the mechanics haven't aged well. So
I'll find out and report back when I run it.
All right, so let's talk Gnolls.
Let's talk Gnolls. So I'm gonna throw a question right out to you.
Awesome.
What's your first memory of hearing about a Gnoll?
Oh, I think I just ran across them in the monster manual. They were around, and in like 4th edition, when I was back playing D&D after my long hiatus, they were around then. And when I made my Abulio campaign, it was divided into 3 sections. There was the demon section, the Fey kind of green, where the green dragon was the ruler, and then there was where the player characters started, kind of the more quote normal section of it. And so I needed more demon-y monsters.
Yeah.
And so that's when I found the Gnolls, because Gnolls are in 4th and on at least, and I don't remember older than that. Very like demon infused.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember. Yeah, I think you were a player, in fact, and you guys were traveling along the border between the demon section and the other section, and I had some Gnolls fight you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? What do you remember about Gnolls?
It's really similar. My first encounter with them was 4th edition. For real. I may have read something about them in an earlier edition of a D&D book, but I don't recall it. Especially when we're talking the looks of the creature, that was informed by 4th edition, that hyena looking thing. And I think that's what Wizard has rolled with now, and that's what I think most people think of when they think of a Gnoll. But when we decided that we were going to talk about these things, I went and I poked around to see if I could find out, did Gnolls just spring up in D&D, or did they have a background in something else? And come to find out that a creature described as a Gnoll, spelled a little differently, a Gnole, first appeared in 1912 in a book called How Nuth Would Have Practiced His Art Upon the Gnolls. It's part of a series of history fantasy books that were written by a fellow named Lord Dunsany. And apparently these were like the fiction books of the period. And so people like Tolkien were reading these. Oh. And so this is kind of like how what he wrote filtered down into Tolkien's idea of what fantasy is. He never described what they looked like. The only thing he ever said about them, about Gnolls, was that they lived on the edge of a sinister wood. Then they watch intruders through holes bored in trees, and that they like emeralds. And it's like, all right, so there's not a lot there.
Oh, that's
then there's another story around the same time, Margaret Sinclair, a story called The Man Who Sold Rope to the Gnolls, and she described Gnolls as physically very different than what the D&D ended up. She described him as looking like, quote, a Jerusalem artichoke, which is a plant. And although they have feet, they have tentacles rather than arms, and no ears. Their eyes are small, red, and faceted like a gemstone. So that's the original Gnoll, and it kind of boggles the mind how they ended up, that sort of weird tentacled thing with gem eyes, becoming these hyena-looking things. And even in I think it was the first edition of D&D, Gnolls are only described, they're described as a cross between gnomes and trolls. Oh, and that's it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so no hyenas yet.
No hyenas yet, yeah. And I think it wasn't until AD&D where the hyena came in.
Gotcha, because I do remember something about it in the AD&D era. Because I subscribed to like Dragon Magazine and had the books for years in AD&D, and I didn't play as much as I would have liked, but I remember seeing Gnolls around. I remember that look and that idea.
And it seems like with AD&D also, that's when they introduced the idea of Gnolls being servants of the demon lord. That's when that whole demonic idea came into play.
Right. So that was the time that the hyena attachment came around too. And so from what I remember of Gnolls, and even in 5th edition Gnolls, they really seem to have taken on like the worst characteristics of hyenas. So maybe let's take a step over and talk about hyenas, what they really are.
Love it.
And the sort of reputation that they have. So hyenas, there are a lot of myths about hyenas. So hyenas are creatures from Africa, essentially really apex predators in Africa. And their only real adversaries are lions. So I think a lot of what we see are hyenas and lions getting into conflict. And, lions being the king of, the jungle, air quotes. I think hyenas get a bad rap related to that. When really, hyenas have long histories of being called, cowardice. Hemingway called them a self-eating devourer of the dead, which is probably fairly true. They do scavenge sometimes, but they hunt a lot, as well. And pretty much all carnivores, will scavenge to some extent. So, they're not extreme scavengers. And Roosevelt called them a singular mixture of abject cowardice and the utmost ferocity.
Oh, Roosevelt.
Yeah. Then there was ideas like a Roman author who I'm not familiar with, Pliny. I don't know if it's Pliny or Pliny, the elder, who wrote that hyenas can magically freeze other animals in place. So this kind of folk history is starting to creep in, around the edges here. And they're, just a general, lack of understanding, and they're not that common.
Yeah.
And have all these negative stereotypes. In reality, they are really quite smart. And part of that is that hyenas are extremely social creatures, especially the spotted and brown hyenas.
Yeah.
They live in these really tight-knit clans, very similar. They have an alpha that's usually female, actually, so not always, but usually female. It's just a reality that this is actually observed by Ingrid Wiesel, founder of the Brown Hyena Research Project. You can't maintain all those social bonds if you aren't intelligent. So the idea is you have to have some higher functioning to know how do the hierarchies work and who are your friends. I think the less intelligent animals just don't do that.
Yeah.
And then there's that hyena laugh that is so, I think, disturbing to a lot of people. You know, one thing about that is it's sounds like a human laugh, but really that's really quite coincidental. It's usually not a happy noise. It's usually a lower ranking hyena who's anxious, who's upset or stressed.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I already addressed that hyenas they aren't only scavengers. They do quite a bit of hunting and are really very good hunters, in fact. And because they hunt in packs, which is probably why they got that reputation of being cowardly, but they can go after quite large animals because they work together.
Right. Yep.
Which I have to admit reminds me a little bit of a Dungeons and Dragons party fighting an ogre or something.
It's very true. Yeah.
It's 4-on-1.
We are better together.
Better together to take down this buffalo or whatever.
One of the things I thought was interesting as I was reading up was the fact that the hyena is, when compared to a primate as far as intelligence, they're pretty similar. But one of the areas that the hyena kind of shines is in cooperative intelligence.
Oh.
Hyenas are better at cooperative things. Like they had a test set out, Dutch scientists, where 2 hyenas would have to pull on ends of a rope at the same time to release food. And the hyenas figured it right out. It was easy. But primates, chimpanzees, gorillas have problems with that. It takes them a long time to learn.
Okay.
They're a little more focused on the self and not the group.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean, and once you learn about these things, like, it's really, like, hyenas are really pretty interesting. Like, they're pretty endearing creatures, you know. I think I find them pretty pretty endearing.
Yeah. They've been one of my, just by look, they've been one of my favorite animals since I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
I've always just liked the way their bodies are shaped a little different. You know, a little bigger on one end and smaller on the other.
Yeah. Genetically, they're really pretty funny, too. They're genetically very similar to felines. And in fact, I think might be even a little closer to felines than they are canines. But they behave in many ways and look closer to canines and to dogs. But they groom themselves like cats do, like felines do. And they don't mark with urine the way dogs do. So they don't lift their leg to pee because they just pee to pee. They do. I think it looks like they poop on things to mark their territory, but they don't. They don't roll in their own poop like dogs sometimes will. So
yeah, and one of the things I loved reading about this was and I could read about it all day, was their society structure and how there is a definite hierarchy. Usually, the females being more dominant in the group, but also it goes with age as well. And the fact that the young hyenas can recognize their relatives out to an uncle, and they know that family inside. And so I as I'm reading this now, I'm thinking about, like, wait a minute, the Gnoll that we have in 5th edition is so boring compared to all this kind of stuff, and it could be so much cooler.
They could. Yeah, they could. Maybe let's keep starting in our current state and talk a little bit about how Gnolls are expressed in 5th edition.
Yeah.
Which, as we agree, is very different than the hyenas that they're supposed to be associated with. So as you said, they're associated with demons, as we talked about. Specifically, you know who? And I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's that Yeenoghhu. You know who is that the big kind of Gnoll-looking demon, who I actually still think is pretty cool. And if you look at the art in Mordenkainen's or Out of the Abyss of that demon lord, he doesn't really look that much like a hyena.
Yeah.
Like Gnolls do, but the demon, he's all demony and just teeth and, you know, pretty awesome, actually. Some other things about Gnoll behavior is they're nomadic destroyers. So already, you know, hyenas have a large range, probably so large that if you casually observe them, you would think that they're nomadic, but they have kind of home territory. And so Gnolls don't build permanent structures or craft. So that seems to suggest, as a humanoid, kind of a lust for action and for killing, right, instead of art or history.
Right.
But as animals, as we were saying, the hyenas are actually very intelligent. So there is the similar hierarchical structure as hyenas. There's a Gnoll pack lord, so every pack has a ruler that way. So that's pretty much it from the monster manual. So it's pretty. There's 3 versions of them. This is a high. Often we talk about D&D here, so I'll talk just real quick. The basic Gnoll is a CR 1/2 creature. So pretty easy to fight. Would come up in a low level adventure, and the Gnoll Pack Lord is CR 2, so the boss, and then the Gnoll Fang of Yinahu is a CR 4, challenge rating 4. So a little tougher, but these are not extremely high level, pretty low level challenges. And then shifting to Volos, because Volos really has this really fun deep dive into a bunch of monsters, including our friends the Gnolls. And I'm still a very paper person, so I hear me flipping away through that. It says right here at the beginning of the Gnolls chapter of Volos that Gnolls, the insatiable hunger. So we really see this focus on just this connection almost to the abyss and this just desire to consume. And then looking at the Gnoll tactics, here's another contrast. See, Gnolls might seem to throw themselves into battle mindlessly, but they possess a rudimentary form of cunning, and so their focus is to butcher the weak. That's pretty smart, actually. Overwhelm the strong. So if they are going to go, they will coordinate their attacks when they need to. Spread far and wide. They have a long range, similar to hyenas. Kill from a distance. That's very smart. Leave no survivors. So those are really the key kind of points of their tactics. So actually, that's not that bad. Pretty realistic. They don't really keep much treasure. Again, they are a nomadic creature in 5th edition. And then there is some talk about there's different kinds of Gnolls that make up a war band. So the Pack Lord that we talked about, warriors, hunters, flesh gnars, those lurk around the edges, hoping to jump on enemies when they become isolated. It's pretty smart. Oh, and then these Gnoll witherlings. When a warband grows desperate for food, its members turn on each other, and those who succumb to the violence are devoured. Ew, really into the survivors preserve the bones of their fallen comrades.
Ooh.
They perform a ritual, and then those bones turn into witherlings.
Interesting.
Oh, that's kind of cool, actually. Yeah. And then the other little bit about Gnolls is that they're prone to hanging out with demons, ghouls, hyenas.
Okay.
Lacratas, which I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And trolls. Yeah, so you see some similarities there with the hyena, but not super strong.
No.
I think this might be a good time to talk about. So what's wrong with Gnolls? Why do they need to be rehabilitated? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in my mind, they're just pretty one-dimensional. They're flat.
Yeah.
Just from what we were reading about with hyenas, there's so much more that they could be to give them a depth, right? Instead of just, mindless killing machines of a demon god, which I mean, that's a thing too. We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons where demons and gods are all over the place, so they're going to have their followers. That's all right. That's something that needs to be in the game.
Yeah, right.
But if we want to use them to the best of their ability and the best of our ability to create, I think there's more to mine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was thinking too, like, as Dungeons and Dragons, I think, evolves with the times, there's a few adaptations I think that it needs to make. And one of them is that I think just players, they want to play more interesting, really, species or types of creatures.
Yes.
People are less interested in just the human-centric, kind of Game of Thrones or just dwarves and elves. So I like that myself. We've talked about this where I like campaigns that are a little more rooted in the normal, but looking at the Twitterverse and looking at what people are playing, like, people want fun. They just want a higher fantasy, and D&D is a high fantasy game. So no wonder people love the tabaxi and they love the turtle and they love, all that stuff. And there's not really a place of a dog humanoid.
No. Yeah.
Species, that you can play as a player character. You could hack a Gnoll for sure.
Yep.
But the flavor doesn't fit at all.
No.
For most campaigns.
Nope.
And the other thing I think about Dungeons and Dragons as evolving is the problematic nature of all of this stuff. So one thing to really pay attention to is that a lot of times humanoids in Dungeons and Dragons can be proxies for human races.
Yes.
And scientifically speaking, that human races is already an obsolete idea that's problematic in itself. But here it is. Like, here's the world we're living in. And so what will often happen, or even subconsciously for many of us, is instead of kind of dealing with real diversity, of having your player characters kind of encounter people to learn about, or to encounter other humans who are different to learn about. They will encounter just monstrous humanoids whose behavior will strongly resemble the mythic behavior of other races.
Right.
So the way, like, this really racist story of how natives lived in Africa or in America when the white settlers came or the white explorers came.
Right.
You know, the stories that they told, and they'll be ascribed to these humanoid races in Dungeons and Dragons. And I think Gnolls probably do have a little of that, you know, of like, oh, that's another humanoid race that we can just have approximate a human culture.
Right. Right.
Maybe not as bad as some. You know, another example of this that I think is bad that still exists is like hobgoblins and having this kind of pseudo-Asian identity to them.
Yeah. Right.
Hobgoblins were not created by people who knew a lot about Japanese culture and samurai culture. Like, that is not where that came from.
Yeah.
That is not an exploration of culture. That is appropriation.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people do this just not thinking about it, but
sure,
you know, it's time to do better. So
yep, exactly. That's the thing. It's always time to do better. So one of the things about Gnolls too that it reminded me of and we've had conversations about this in games that we've played, the problems with orcs.
Yes.
And
oh my gosh, yes. Let's talk about the problems of orcs.
Yes. Let's talk about that. We'll
Yeah.
just shoehorn out that small discussion into this one about Gnolls. But I think you can see in 5th edition Wizards of the Coast trying to examine orcs and look at them a little differently. So I think it's in Volos where they start talking about the culture, their belief system, their daily lives and family, that sort of thing. So like you said about doing better, I think they're trying, right? They're trying with the orc to re-examine.
Yeah. And I think that lineage of orcs is also, I think, came in large part from World of Warcraft, you know, because orcs play such a large part in the Horde faction. And so they just, because they needed half of the player base in World of Warcraft playing Horde, at least that's the earliest that I know of. Those orcs are really interesting. They have a full culture and they're very much presented in a protagonist way. You know, well, actually, I played Horde when I played World of Warcraft, so I only know from that perspective. But you know, they're very like smart, interesting culture. The culture of the orc there is very smart and interesting. Indeed. Another thing about orcs is the whole half orc problem.
Yeah.
Where, you know, really this is a playable race kind of designed around rape, which is just not cool, right? It's just this idea of this coupling, and you know, sure, there's stories of orcs and humans living happily together, but I don't know that that's really the idea there, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
And so I've just had them be their own race. You know, the half orc without the problematic history is kind of interesting. Got some kind of qualities to it and has some kind of power, some rage powers, and plant it in a culture of its own. I think that's pretty interesting. You know, kind of as you were saying. So here's a question that's totally another step away from our original topic, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts about half elves.
Ooh, right.
We don't talk about half elves very much. It's definitely, I think, less problematic because there's not this idea that it was non-consensual. You know, I think everyone has this Aragorn as a half elf kind of idea, but it still seems a little weird to me. It's still, you know, I think there might be something there. Have you given any thought to this? I have just half-baked thoughts.
You know, I haven't really. Just my initial gut reaction though is sort of reiterating what you just said, is that there is an implied that's okay in D&D. A half elf is fine because it's coming from a good place of people that love each other, and the half orc coming from a place of violence. But there is still something odd about it, because I think about who is that? There's a character in my mind, Tanis, the half elven, right? In like from Dragonlance. And I seem to remember him being set up as a paragon of heroism. He was largely the protagonist, I think, of at least the first 3 books. Try to think now about a half-orc protagonist that's set up as anything but, like in D&D canon, in their stories, that's set up as anything but an outsider. There's so much to unpack in this. There really is.
And there is, and I think the other, and maybe just to wrap up this this subplot to go back to Gnolls, but I think part of what makes me uncomfortable about half elves is, actual people who are of mixed heritage in the world have a unique set of struggles,
right?
That I don't have, right? And I think a half elf is a clumsy attempt to capture some of that, but I don't think that's their story. I don't think largely the canonical half elf was created by someone who has lived those struggles in the real world. As I'm, thinking about this,
right.
Processing this in real time in large part, but I think that's probably the root of my discomfort with half elves.
I think that's a good way to put words to the uncomfortableness that I was thinking about it too. I think that's a good way of. I think your words convey what I was feeling.
Yeah. So anyway, listeners, so thank you for
Yeah.
listening to us kind of fumble through that topic as two white guys of pretty high privilege, but we're trying and would love any feedback about that. So anyway, back to Gnolls.
Trying to do better.
We are. So which way should we go with Gnolls here? I think they there's two approaches. The Gnoll as this kind of demon spawn fusion of hyena and human. It's actually kind of interesting. Like as done in a certain way of kind of being spawned from just demons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually that's how I prefer my orcs too. Like kind of like the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings, in the movie especially, where they were like pulled from the earth or something. Like there's no like mommy and daddy Uruk-hai.
Yeah, right.
Totally. Who have a culture and create art. If they're just kind of like spawned from evil, I think that's kind of fair game.
That reminds me of something that you say, Chad, that I want to get you to put out there, is your idea of a monster versus an actual living species.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is that if it has babies, it's not inherently evil.
Yeah.
I think then then it's a culture. The orcs and Volos are clans that have like baby orcs as presented in Volos. It reminds me a little bit of the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders in Star Wars. We knew Anakin was going wrong when he like wiped out that village.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though there was conflict between them on Tatooine, you knew that was evil. Anakin was being evil.
Anakin was going down that path.
Yeah, and that was a big marker. And it wasn't subtle. I mean, George Lucas was not subtle about that at all. So I think the Gnoll that we want is something that has a culture, right? That has like baby hyenas.
Yeah.
And has a life, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So how do we get there?
Maybe we think about like so we have two disparate elements. Maybe. That's a way to approach it, is having, what are the two core disparate ideas that we want to fuse? Maybe Gnolls are just hyenas that are humanoid and not necessarily human.
Yeah.
If we take away the human part of it, we can just lean into the, like, if it's just a smarter walking hyena.
I like that. Yeah.
What would that be?
Yeah.
What if they were like shot like with the high evolutionary gun or whatever?
Well, I love the idea of a playable D&D character whose culture is matriarchal.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And really family based, where family is everything to them.
Yeah.
Just down a little rabbit hole that would be an easy hook for a Gnoll coming from that sort of background to jump in with another group of adventurers.
Yeah, totally.
It's a type of family.
Yes.
Right? They need a pack. They need a family.
But it just reminds me of, we adopted a dog in December, and part of why dog owners are a thing is that dogs just want to be part of a pack, right? They want to join your family.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the point you were making, right? Is that the hyenas are kind of ready to join the new pack of the adventuring party, rather than, being the lone wolf or whatever. Actually, wolves are very pack oriented.
Yeah. Earlier in my research too, one of the things I read is that hyenas spend maybe about 2 years in their pack, and then they leave and find another one.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you get your genetic diversity that way.
Yeah, exactly. So they're always out and about looking for another family or another pack.
Great.
Which, fits right in for D&D.
So another thing about hyenas is that they are carnivorous. And I think that might be kind of a natural thing to carry over. I mean, why not?
Yep.
For our new Gnolls. But they don't have to necessarily, maybe they like cooked meat, once they In fact, I would think so.
Sure.
Or maybe they're not too picky about it, but would prefer cooked. I don't know, kind of like the idea of cooked, like,
Sure. Yeah.
they're civilized. Another thing about hyenas is they have a large territory. I guess are these gnolls, do they craft? Do they make things? And the other, one thing I want to be careful of is making them any kind of approximation of a native peoples. So I don't want to do that.
Sure.
Maybe there's a place to differentiate them a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't craft so much. Maybe they
trade.
Yeah. Oh.
As they're roaming from place to place and getting things, maybe they're shrewd traders.
Yeah, so they eat that they understand. They're smart, right? And they're social. So they are maybe more clever. So maybe their intelligence is kind of okay, but not high, not that high. Maybe they're like an 8, 9, 10 intelligence, but their wisdom is high.
Yeah.
And their charisma is actually pretty high as well.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And so they just travel, like kind of they have a range, so semi-nomadic, but they don't go too far probably. If they're that smart, they have fur though. So if they're in a kind of a warmer climate, kind of a deserty tundra, warm climate, maybe they don't need shelter that much. Maybe that's just the exception. Right. I guess that's something to think about too, right? Is that these are kind of tropical creatures. I should think a little bit about that relationship with the demons. Do we want to preserve anything there? The whole Who connection.
Right. It makes me wonder, thinking about that in conjunction with thinking about them being nomadic and traders, is wondering about how their society would, if it would adopt any of the ideas or beliefs of other societies that they come in contact with.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah,
how absorbent, for lack of another word, they are to that sort of thing. And if that would go towards religion-based stuff as well.
Yeah.
Maybe some groups are more believing in Inahu, but others have decided, like, this other place over here believes this. So maybe they are adopters of other ideas. Maybe they seek those out as well.
Yeah, why not? That's the thing about different species and races, that they don't all have to be one thing, right? They shouldn't be. That's actually a problem with D&D, is how similar all
exactly.
these are. So,
yeah, right.
So that makes a lot of sense. Like, if a human can be an evil cultist, surely a Gnoll can be an evil cultist.
Right.
So there could be entire clans who are in Who's pocket.
Yep.
And have kind of accepted that. I guess, what's the dominant religion, or is there? Like, so thinking about a hyena.
Yeah.
Who is just smart.
Right.
A hyena they're not quite smart enough to think about those terms. Yeah. Most human cultures create gods kind of in their own image with a little flourish. The Egyptians had, Anubis, and the Hindus have a lot of gods, but like Ganesh is a good example. It's like, okay, kind of human, but with an elephant head.
Yeah.
Like the Greeks too, like all those gods started as pretty human looking and seeming, but then they got just bigger. Zeus just got more arrogant and more whatever, bigger in personality. And different cultures did it differently, of course. And it's not a universal, but it's a trend for sure in human culture. So back to our friends, the Gnolls, as a hyena.
Right.
If you started with a dog god, but made it something else somehow.
Yeah.
So we already have savagery in Who, so we don't need that.
No, it's like maybe like a mother aspect or a family aspect, something that's all about finding home or being at home or protection.
Right. So here's another decision point. We've talked about Gnolls being nomads. Is it because they're seeking, or are they just living? Like, are they like, is there a messianic quality?
Right.
To it? Are they waiting or looking? I have to say, I'm inclined not. Kind of like them happy outside.
Yes.
These are outside dogs.
Yeah. Totally.
They don't want cities. No. They don't need a home. They are home.
Everywhere they go is their home.
So this god is, I think, like you were saying about kind of the clan or the pack, or keeping safe and finding enough and finding good hunting and all that stuff.
Yeah. I love that. Oh, that's so good. Cool.
And I think that's a good duality, right? You have who is this like, devourer and consumer.
Yeah.
Who just takes too much, right?
Yep.
And I think the other one is a little more balanced, but more focused on the clan.
Right.
And like reproduction and kind of that stuff.
I really like that duality, that double side, that human nature, right? That there's devils and angels live within everybody. So
yes. For sure. Maybe the last thing we could do is talk through what a player character might look like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to design it necessarily.
No,
What
yeah.
sorts of abilities or racial abilities might a Gnoll have in this new version?
I would love to put in some version of something like a pack tactics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But it might be fun to do it in a different way, in that if you're next to an ally, sort of like a fighter can give protection with a shield.
With a reaction.
That if you're next to an ally, that ally gets like a +1 to AC or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
As you're working together that way, instead of it being offensive. I mean, the offensive thing would be cool too, but it's just a little. It's a shift in what these Gnolls who maybe don't worship Inahu are all about.
Yeah, you could, as a reaction, grant disadvantage on an attack. Which is like a fighter ability, also. If you have a shield, like you were saying, I think it's disadvantage. I'm not certain of that.
Yeah,
it can go either way. Like give an AC bonus or disadvantage.
Yeah, maybe allow a ally to using your bonus action to allow an ally to attack.
Ooh, yeah.
That.
That would be pretty powerful. I think you'd want to limit that.
Yeah.
So I think your option is like use your reaction for it, which wouldn't be that bad. 1 extra attack per round.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
And then you can't do your opportunity attack, so that's not too bad. Especially if it had to be circumstantial, like your ally and the opponent or something had to be adjacent to you or whatever.
Right. Sure.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad, right? Because like an opportunity attacks and it uses your reaction, so that doesn't. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
What might be a fun downtime or like around the campfire thing that we could work in? I always like those. Those things are out of combat things that let your party do something, like gain a extra hit die or something, or something like that.
Yeah, like lick your wounds, kind of.
Yeah.
Makes me think of that Darkest Dungeons game, which had a lot of those mechanics in it. So I'm actually flipping through Volos because it has a lot of different kind of monstrous races, just for ideas.
Or it could be even something like if a member of your party goes hunting and there's a Gnoll in the party, they get a advantage on their check to get food or something.
Oh, yeah. On survival, yeah. And actually, I would think that Gnolls would just come with proficiency in survival themselves, too.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
The way we've created them. And maybe nature and survival. It's a little different, but they could have advantage on perception checks that are smell-based.
Oh,
I think wolves have that. I think that would be a very natural thing. It could be something about avoiding surprise, too. Because if you're sleeping outside all the time,
right,
like our Gnolls are,
like
you would wake up. Like hyenas don't set watch, I don't think they just wake up, like like I just look at my dog, and when they sleep, they sleep, but they wake up like nothing if anything happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And especially the younger one, like she is up in a second, like ready to go.
Totally.
So that would actually be really badass,
in complete contrast to my cat, who, when he wakes up, he's groggy for 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's funny.
So it's perfect.
So the hyena could have like can't be surprised because of sleep or something.
Yeah.
Can just wake up, ready to go. Or avoid surprise or gets advantage on surprise checks or something along those lines. I think that's a good outline.
Yeah, I think so. I think great jumping off points and ideas, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think we made our Gnolls much more hyena-like, kind of something that's more interesting and could live in the world. And I think I'm going to add them to Halcyon. Halcyon being my campaign world. They are in the middle part with the Beast Lord Confederation. I think they would be a part of that.
I like it.
Those of you listening at home on your iPhones or whatever, if you have ideas, what would you do to rehabilitate the Gnolls, or what would you add or subtract, or what would we not think about? If you have any corrections, especially about our conversation about the problematic nature of Gnolls before, would love to hear it. We're always trying to learn.
Definitely.
And with that, if you're listening to this on iTunes, really appreciate if you liked it, giving us a review, especially 5-star reviews help people find us. If you're listening to this on YouTube, similar, if you liked it, click the like button, and would invite you to subscribe if you'd like. If you'd like to reach me, probably the easiest way is on Twitter, at ContClockwise, ContClockwise. Galen, what do you want to tell folks about how to find you?
Probably the best way would also be on Twitter. You can find me at Zobmie, Zobmie. I'd love to hear any questions you had about the show, comments about the show, ideas for future shows as well. Always looking for new topics to ramble on about. So until next time, folks, take care of yourselves.
And game great.